So I recently came across a podcast on a money website which is called the Money Rules Podcast, where they were actually discussing a topic on everything that you actually need to know when setting up a trust. And I'll leave the link in the description below if you actually want to listen to it. So I'm actually going to give you a summary and also provide with you some of the examples so that you can actually get a clear context of what they were actually talking about in that podcast from my point of view. So please know that I'm not a financial advisor and none of my videos constitute as financial advice. If you're seeking for any financial advice or advisor, then look for someone who's certified and registered with the FSCA. So the first question you need to ask is, what is a trust? So in simple terms, a trust is like a special arrangement where someone called a trustee takes care of things like money, property, or belongings for someone else who is actually called a beneficiary. Then the trustee actually makes sure that the things are used or given to the beneficiary in the right way, following certain rules set up in advance. So it is often used to make sure that things are actually kept safe and used properly for the benefit of the person the trust is actually made for. Now let's discuss all the steps that you actually need to take in order for you to start building your own trust. So step 1 is to be clear on your objectives. Before you create an inter vivos trust, also known as a living trust, it's actually really important for you to fully understand what role it will actually play in your overall estate plan. So trusts actually have different uses, and those uses impact how they're actually set up, what stuff goes into them, and also the specific type of trust you choose. So make sure that you are clear about what you actually want your trust to actually achieve. And a living trust can also help protect you for future generations, to keep your personal things separate from your business stuff, shield assets from people you owe money to, or also even reduce the taxes that your estate might have to pay when you pass away. So know exactly why you're actually setting it up right from the start. So step 2 is to choose the appropriate type of trust. So once you understand what the trust will do in your estate plan, now you'll have to decide between two types of trust, which is known as the vested, also called the bewind, or the discriminatory, also called the ownership trust. So first, let's discuss the vested trust. So the vested trust, this is like passing ownership of trust assets to beneficiaries, but trustees are actually responsible for handling and also managing those assets for beneficiaries' benefit. So the trustees don't actually make the choices. So the trustees' roles actually must be clear about who actually benefits. And the second one is the discriminatory trust. Here is where the trust assets move from the person who made the trust to actually the trustees. So the trustees then manage the assets as outlined in the trust rules. So trustees here can actually decide how to use the assets and income, and even if they eventually go to the beneficiaries. Then beneficiaries don't own the assets but can also expect some kind of benefits. So let's make an example. In a vested trust, you actually give your children ownership of a house, but your siblings actually look after it until they are old enough. Then in a discriminatory trust, this is where your siblings actually decide how to use the house for your own or for your children's benefits rather. So after that, you actually get to choose a name for the trust in which you actually want, and which you can register with the master of the high court and not the registrar of the companies. So you actually have the freedom in picking a suitable name without actually needing to reserve it. Step 3, determine which assets will be transferred to the trust and how. As a person creating the trust, you actually have to decide which things you want to put into the trust and how to do it. So here are 2 ways in which you can actually do this. The first way is to actually use your annual donation tax exemption. So every year you can move up to 100,000 worth of stuff into the trust without paying taxes on it. So if you're a couple, you can also move 200,000 worth of stuff. And the second one is to sell assets to trust and create a loan account. So in another way, to sell things to the trust and then the trust owes you money like a loan. But you have to make sure that this is done properly. You have to write down the deal in a sales agreement so that it doesn't look like you're actually giving stuff away for free. If it seems like a gift, then there could actually be taxes that you'll actually need to pay. So let's make an example. So for example, you can move your art collection into the trust without paying taxes on it as long as it's worth less than 100,000 in a year. Or if you sell your vintage car to the trust and they owe you money, you should have a clear agreement in place so that the tax people don't actually think that you are giving the car away as a gift. Step 4, select your trustees. So the people you choose as trustees will actually have a big job. They first must actually take care of the trust assets for the good of the people who benefit from the trust. And so be smart with picking your trustees and look for someone who knows about the money or has experience in handling trust. Also, it's very best to avoid having an even number of trustees, as they might get stuck in disagreements. And too many trustees can also make things complicated for meetings, signing papers, and also attending events. So if your trust involves family business and both trustees and beneficiaries are family members, it's actually a smart move to actually have at least one trustee who isn't a family member, because your trust rules need to be very clear about what the trustees should do, what power they have, how they get paid, and also what they are allowed to do. Step 5. Name your beneficiaries. So you need to choose your beneficiaries and also make sure that they are easily identifiable in your trust paperwork. So what your beneficiaries can do, it depends on whether your trust is vested, which is fixed, or discriminatory, which is flexible. But remember, your trust paperwork should also say how you want your beneficiaries to get the benefits. So in a discriminatory trust, beneficiaries don't have a set right to assets. So trustees actually decide how to share assets and also income. And in a vested trust, beneficiaries have a set right to a trust asset. So your paperwork should actually clearly say what you want. And also, you should remember that as a person who is setting up the trust, you can give different benefits to each beneficiary. So for example, in a discriminatory trust, you put money aside for your kid's future, and then your trustees then decide where and how much each child gets. And in a vested trust, you set aside money for your grandchildren. They have a definite right to their shares, which means that your paperwork should also clearly explain that. Then step 6, now it's time for you to actually draft your trust deed. So a trust is like a special plan you write down. This plan, called a trust deed, needs to be really clear. It actually explains everything about the trust, like what the people in charge, the trustees, can do, how they are paid, and how things in the trust are taken care of for the people who actually benefit, who are the beneficiaries. The trust deed also has the rules for how the trust runs, like meetings, decisions, and what to do for if there is a problem. So it even talks about checking money records and also keeping meeting notes and also sharing updates and deciding how long the trust actually lasts. So since this can get complicated, it's smart for you to actually get an expert to actually make the trust deed. They make sure that everything is done right. So think of a trust deed like a detailed map showing who's in charge of a treasure box, trustees, and how they use the treasure, which are the assets, and also how they actually work together. So it also has rules just like a map made by an experienced explorer. So a specialist should also make the trust deed. Then step 7, you should register your trust. So to register your trust, you need to go to the master's office where most of your trust assets are located, and you also need these following documents. The first document you need is the letter of the master of the high court, the trust of a registration form, 2 signed trustees, and acceptance of trustees signed by each trustee with their ID copies. And also you need a sworn affidavit by the independent trustees if that is applicable. And also you need a beneficiaries declaration form. You also need what is called the JM21 forms, a proof of payment for the registration, final certified court order. Also, your trust also gets a registration number starting with IT, a number from the master's office, and the registration year. So once registered, the founder must give something to the trust or it won't exist. And when the master is happy with the papers, they give the letters of authority to the 2 or 4 the trustees to actually act. So another thing you need to remember that trustees can't do business until they are authorized, and after that they open a trust bank account and register with the SARS. So in short, to set up a trust, you should gather the needed papers, visit the right office, get approval, and also then your trustees can take action for the trust. So guys, we've actually came to the end of the video, and if you like this video where I was talking about the steps in which you need to take in order for you to actually build up a trust, or in order for you to make a trust, then you'll kindly also like this video right here where I talk about the different types of trust and how you can actually start investing in those trusts. So check this video right here, and I'll see you on this video.